Well, welcome. I'm sorry we're a little bit late there, but it's been a year since we did this last time. This is BlueTube live in the woods, my local woods. A year ago, I started this because I thought it would be nice for people who don't get a chance to go in the woods at the start of the first lockdown would be able to see things through my eyes. And actually, I was really lucky because a few people joined me who knew an awful lot more than me about what goes on in woods. And luckily this year, we're going up a grade because we've got one of them also live alongside us. Let me introduce you to Dr. Tony Whitbread.
Hello there. Yes, hello again this year. And I think we're going to be walking through the woods, or rather Jane's going to be walking through the woods. I'm at home here, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about what we actually see as we go through there over the next 20 or so minutes.
And so we'd love your questions as we go through. If we stop at things or you want me to stop somewhere else, just let us know. But the whole point of this is for you to gain as much knowledge as I hope to about what is beneath all of the lovely foliage that I'm going to show you. So we're going to switch our cameras off so we can show you what's going on. Hold on a second. And here we go. So I am going to start, Tony, and I'm just trying to get into position here. I have seen a lot of daffodils. Now, I obviously know they're daffodils, but they seem a bit small to me.
Yeah, these are our native daffodils, the ones we get in a few of our woods in Sussex. Sometimes you get them in roadside verges and even hedgerows. But yeah, this is our native daffodil. It is smaller. It's got kind of slightly bluish leaves. The flowers are kind of yellow as well, lighter yellow, and they nod in one direction. So they're more delicate than the kind of loud things that we grow in our garden.
And what else is different about them?
As I say, you find them in these ancient woods, and because we are in an ancient wood today, which means that this woodland has been in existence for at least 400 years, probably a lot longer. And yeah.
Are the flowers any different?
They are a bit, yes, as I say, they are lighter. And
right.
Yes,
okay.
they're
I mean, they are literally going to be, I don't know if you can see, but they're all up the banks here. So they spread quite fast, don't they?
Yes, they don't spread that fast, actually. Where you find them, they've probably been there for quite a long time. So they colonize an area over a very long time period, but then they're an indication of something that's been there for a long time. So no, they don't actually colonize very quickly. No, they have to have come in a long time ago.
And how common is it to find them in woods in Sussex?
Not very common. Hang on, I see my picture keeps disappearing, so I'm going to put my camera on so it just doesn't keep going. Yes, they're not that common, but where you find them in kind of areas. So this area we're in today, I know roughly where you are. It is one of the locations in Sussex where we tend to see them. So yeah, right. they're reasonably extensive in the places where you find them.
Okay, so if you switch your camera off, I'll find something else that we can have a look at, so that we can see it in all glory. So let me see what is going on. There's an awful lot of this going on. Lots of very, very dark green, pointy leaves coming up all over the woods. Can you see those?
I certainly can, yes, and that's what gives this your video here and the name. It's the leaves of the bluebell. You know? Yeah, it's the leaves of bluebells. Yes, so that in a few weeks' time that will be a mass of bluebells there, where at the moment it's mostly daffodils.
And the other thing that I've noticed when I've been in these woods is there's a lot of moss around. Does moss have different names?
Oh, there's a massive different sorts of mosses. They're quite difficult to identify on camera. Probably quite difficult even if I was standing there. But that looks like something with the Latin name of Mnium hornum, which I think is called a bank moss. It's one of our commonest mosses along a bank there. Very, very primitive plants, really. They don't have any vascular tissue, which means they don't have any little tubes to transfer water. So they're quite primitive plants. Very simple.
Well, I'm sorry we're a little bit late there, but it's been a year since. Oh,
so that looks like something with the Latin name of Mnium hornum, which I think is called a bank moss. It's one of our commonest mosses along a bank there. Very, very primitive plants, really. They don't have any vascular tissue, which means they don't have any little tubes to transfer water. So they're quite primitive quite primitive plants, very simple.
Well, I'm sorry, we're a little bit late there, but it's been a year since. Oh, I'm hearing myself back at the moment. I don't know.
Hornum, which I think is called a moss. It's one of our common.
And Tony, can you hear me at the moment?
Yes, we just had a repeat of everything for some reason.
We did, didn't we?
That was very odd. I heard myself, which is very disconcerting.
Well, there we go. Everyone's heard it twice. Lovely. So Jan Dillaway was saying that Tony's video is not working, although it did at first. We're actually going to be staying on plants vision at the end, Jan.
Right, it's not working very well at the moment.
Tony, do the daffodils crowd out other flowers?
No, they don't really. No, they come out early in the year. If we look up now, there's not much in the way of tree leaves, and that's because that's so the light can get down to the ground flora, and the daffodils make use of that. So they're out before a lot of the other plants. They make use of the open canopy, so that's what they do.
So what's happening actually, Tony, when you're speaking is that we're getting a black screen with your name on it when we should
I saw that.
Hiding self-view on it.
I think I'll have to leave my camera on because otherwise you just get a box, don't you? So there we go.
That wasn't part of the original plan, was it?
It wasn't. No, I was supposed to disappear altogether. But
we have honestly rehearsed all of this, folks. But let's just have a look. And if I talk when I'm showing things, then people can see things and then you can maybe talk about them. So there's a bit of fern here. It actually looks like it's seen a bit of life already. As in, it might even be on its way out. Is that the frost that's getting to it?
Possibly. They're fairly frost hardy. This is a fern called a buckler fern. And it's probably just about thinking about growing this year. It'll be all 3, 4, 5 times that size in a couple of months' time. But yeah, that's a buckler fern. And that's another characteristic plant of this sort of woodland. It likes kind of clay soils, which is where we are at the moment. You don't get it quite so much on the downs, for example. So that's buckler fern, sitting there at the base of this nice big chestnut coppice.
And I'm going to see if I can find a different type of fern in a moment, because I think there are some. Now, one of the things I did notice is that we've got, I don't want to squash any of these, we've got this tree that's sort of come down. And I wasn't sure because the leaves are quite smooth on it, and it's been chopped down a bit. I couldn't work out what that was, Tony.
Interesting, isn't it? Because that's just a holly tree. And the interesting thing about holly is that it really only produces these really spiky leaves nearer the ground. Because if you think about it, it's a defense against grazing animals. So if you're going to go to the trouble of making spikes, you may as well only do it where you're likely to be eaten by grazing animals. So the leaves right up in the top of the canopy, they're much more elliptical. And as you say, when you see them on the ground, they're a bit incongruous because they don't actually look a bit much like holly. They look like something else entirely. But no, that's part of the holly tree.
Wow, amazing. Well, I would never have known. And there is a lot of holly in this wood as well. I mean, what is most of the wood that we're looking at? What are the trees that we're looking at?
Yeah, most of the trees we're looking at are actually sweet chestnut, which is something that was probably planted here a couple of hundred years ago. If you look at the base of the trees there, they're quite wide, and that gives you an indication of how old the tree is. Now, they've been coppiced, which means cut on a rotation of about 20 years, and the coppice stool gets wider and wider every time it's coppiced. And so you can see there an area that has been a stem that's been cut. And it was probably about 20 years old. Used for making stakes. In the past, it was used to make hop poles for growing hops up. And that, I think most of this wood is chestnut coppice. Interestingly, I think the first introduction of chestnut might have been right back in the Roman period.
Wow, so this goes back to the Romans. Now, actually, Clarissa was asking where we are, and we don't want to publicise it precisely because obviously we don't want to see hordes of people down here when it would be an unnatural thing to happen. But I live in Pulborough and it's walking distance of my home. And I might be able to clarify a little bit more after that. Now, is this the same fern here?
No, this is a different fern. This is male fern, and it's slightly less divided. Buckler fern has got fronds that are more divided. This is a bit more like fingers. And this one grows on, you get this more on the downs. So where you get slightly more chalk in the soil, slightly lime enrichment, then you get this plant as well. They do cross over a lot, so you often get them obviously you often get them in the same place, which is what's happened here. So this is male fern. The other one was buckler fern.
I mean,
with a
unfortunately,
daffodil in the middle.
we're not seeing as much this week as we did in our rehearsal, where you could actually see a lot of the plants whilst you were talking. We were only seeing one thing or another, which is a shame because I can't show so much detail. So I'm going to just stay on the shots a bit longer before we talk again. If I'm talking, it makes the picture come alive. So unfortunately, you're going to have to listen to me. I don't know if anybody else has got any questions out there. But I am going to try to find something that we played with last year. And I'm going to ask whether there is any. Oh, right. Okay. I've been told reliably there's something I want to ask you about. So I'm going to go and try and find it. But meanwhile, let me just show you. When I'm moving, it's not so clear. But there are rather a lot of these native daffodils and lots of the ferns just growing up in and amongst them. And Tony, if you do see anything when I'm doing this, you think, aha, let me know, because I have no idea what I'm looking at. Oh, is there anything that eats fern? Asks Clarissa.
Golly, that's a good question. You don't often see one with a bite taken out of it. There must be lots of things, but yeah, I don't really know. When you think about it, more than 65 million years ago, practically everywhere was covered in ferns, and they were gobbled up by something. So yes, I should think there must be, but I'm afraid I don't know.
Oh well, we've got to find somebody else who does then, haven't we? Now, can you tell the age of a coppice tree from the rings?
Yes. You can tell a lot from looking at the rings. Obviously, I think every kid knows if you count the rings, then you can work out the age of the tree. But that's just the age of that one stem. Now, I can't see in detail, but I guess that's about 20 years. But if you look at the width of the whole thing, that gives, if you imagine a tree that wide, that gives you an idea of its age. Now, it grows quite quickly, this one, so I guess that's 150 or 200 years old, that coppice stool.
So let me just show that coppice stool, because when you're talking, we can't see it, I don't think. So let me just wait until we've caught up. I don't know if you're seeing that. There we go. And we've both stopped talking. I just thought for a minute it might be nice to listen. And I think you can, apart from the odd noise of a mechanical motorbike somewhere and occasional planes, you should be able to hear some birds. This is what we call slow television. Okay, Lee Walther has just joined us to ask any good tips for telling native daffs apart from the garden variety. So we're going to go back in and have a look first, Tony, before we get you talking, just so that people can have a look. Okay. Now, actually, what I should do is say what I've learned from Tony, which is that the native daffs are much shorter. So you can see that's just tiny in its length. They've also got a bluish tinge on their leaves, and the flower is a bit paler than you would normally get. Now, how did I do there, Tony?
I think you did pretty well. You've obviously been listening. Yeah, that's exactly right. And the flower tends to nod a little bit more than perhaps our domestic varieties as well. So yes, that's it in a nutshell. That's the kind of difference. This
is really woodland nature moment. I've got a spider now hanging off the rig that I've got my phone on. I can't show it to you because it hasn't quite wound its way up. It's beautiful though. Do you know anything about spiders, Tony?
Very little. There's quite a few species. The one you get at home, I think most people know, but you've probably got something rather different out there in the woods.
Yes, I wish I could show it to you because it is winding its way up. Maybe it'll wind up to the lens. It's trying to. It's very, very thin legs. But no, I don't think it is. I think it's probably going to go up my arm in a minute. That's all right. We don't mind that. Oh, there's a woodpecker somewhere can you tell me where the catkins are, please? I'm just asking a passerby. I wonder who that passerby might be. Oh, lots of lovely lichen. You're welcome, Lee. Now, this is a good game, isn't it? So we have some catkins here. And first of all, Tony, I was going to ask you if you could tell me what tree they are from, because they've been pulled down a bit.
Right, okay. It looks like what we got here is something from probably a hazel. It looks a bit like that. And we're looking at the catkins, which are the male part of the plant. And being the male part of the plant, it's the thing that produces the pollen. Now, we've had a massive amount of pollen over the last week or two. I don't know whether you've seen, but certainly my car is covered in a kind of yellowy green haze. And that's from, in our case, older pollen. The trees produce vast amounts of pollen because they're wind pollinated. Now, if we're lucky, if you give that a bit of a shove, you may actually see a big cloud of pollen come out of it. See if it's still...
Okay.
Depends how many people have knocked it.
I'll talk for a little minute so I get the camera back on the item, and then we'll see how we get on with my pollen experiment. So I'm just going to tap. Oh, no. I'm going to tap this now, I think. Can you see that? Let me just go. Oh, not much pollen in that one. I'm going to try another one. Hold a minute. See if this one looks a bit juicier. Little bit of a cloud coming out there. This is a new game, isn't it? You could do this with your kids at home. Let me see if I can get anything out of this one. Yeah, a little bit of a sort of greeny, yellowy cloud coming out of that catkin. I'm going to try one more because this is a new game for me. Right down here in the woods. Here we go. Okay. If you can see it. There we go. Bit puff of smoky stuff, and my microphones, everything got caught in the woods there. That's the love of the woods, isn't it? Just getting all entwined with twigs and goodness knows what. So
certainly about a week ago, certainly when it got very warm, I was able to see kind of clouds of yellow blowing off of the older trees, and that was all pollen. So if you suffer from hay fever, that's what would make you sneeze.
Well, I do suffer from hay fever, but I don't think this sort of pollen gets up my nose, as it were. Right. What makes this an ancient woodland, Tony?
Right. Well, ancient woodlands have been in existence for at least 400 years. Actually, that's because when the first maps were around. So most of them have been around since the Ice Age. So they've been around for a very long time. But that doesn't mean they've been unmanaged. All of our woods have been managed. So these are managed woods. They've been looked after and cared for all of that time. But they're at least 400 years old. And they tend to support sorts of plants and animals that are very slow to colonize. And therefore, you tend to only get them in ancient woods. That seems to be what we're looking at today.
Well, we have had a wonderful look around today. We have had a few little technical issues because we normally can see the woods the whole time that Tony is talking when we've been rehearsing this. We did do a little practice, some of you all have noticed last week. So I think we're going to go back to the drawing board and do a little bit more practicing. No, one of our issues at the beginning actually was, funnily enough, we didn't get enough 4G out of the woods. I was surprised to get any, to be honest, but we need to have that for our broadcast. But we hope that next week we will be able to sort out any of those issues and bring you even more things from the woods. Oh, I just caught Jerry, my husband, who's my support pack man, in shot. Tony, if we come back here week after week in the same place, yes, you do know the Clarissa that it's live. Do you think that we're going to see a lot of change?
Yes, it's always lovely to come back to the same part of the wood time after time because you see change all through the year, but particularly in the spring, because you'll get the daffodils to start with, then a bit later we'll get the bluebells. We might see some yellow archangel, maybe some wood anemones, and you'll gradually see things coming into leaf, into flower. You'll see the canopy forming. And then you'll get into the midsummer when it's all much more kind of a green shade. So yeah, woods change all through the year. So coming back week after week definitely is worthwhile.
Well, that is exactly what we're going to do, isn't it? And we are very grateful to those of you who've joined us live today. We've been learning a lot, both from Tony and from the world of technology. And we have to polish up our act a little bit, but we will be doing that because it's worth it, because this place is just incredible. And I'm going to, before I say goodbye and I come back into vision as well, we're just going to spend a minute or so listening and being quiet in the woods, because that's a lovely thing to do on a Sunday. And we're ending where we started, with the beautiful native daffodil. I heard a great spotted woodpecker in the distance then, and there are wood pigeons around as well. But I'm sure that the bird life will come out too. You can hear the cooing there. And it's a beautiful, beautiful day. So I think we're going to have to call it a day at that. It's been an interesting experiment, hasn't it, Tony?
It has a bit, yeah. Certain things happen that didn't kind of happen before. So it's always nice to be surprised, isn't it?
Well, hopefully nature will surprise us next week as well, because the forecast isn't quite so good. But we'll keep in touch with everybody. We'll sharpen up our act, and we hope to see you all back again next week. And Viv, thanks very much to try to get us on air.
I'm not so sure did so well today, but anyway, thanks very much everybody for joining us.
And we'll be back again next week, and I'll leave Viv to switch us off. Bye bye from BlueTube.
Bye bye everyone.